Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere and welcome to The Niche Cast, coming at you on the 25th of June. Here in Aotearoa, we are discussing Aotearoa sport as we always do in our podcast. We are from thenichecache.com, where you can have the pleasure of reading about how much the Warriors sucked in their 66-6 666 straight out of the devil, their big old loss to the Gold Coast Titans. It was disgusting. It was yucky. It was all sorts of just ugh. And unfortunately for myself, covering the Blackcaps, covering the Warriors, it's been a yucky old period as far as results go. Obviously, we will chat through the Warriors. We'll chat through some Kiwi NRL stuff because guess it was awesome against the Warriors. None other than Keanu Kinney, none other than Kieran Foran, bit of Aaron Clark, and even a bit of a Isaac Liu line break. That's how you know the Warriors really shat the bed, when Isaac Liu has a line break. So shout out to Isaac Liu and shout out to the Titans. We do love the Kiwi NRL Titans. So that was a fun part of that, and we'll chat through that. We've got some All Whites to discuss, bit of White Ferns. White Ferns are starting their tour of England this week as well, so we'll chat through that. We've also got Auckland FC signings, maybe some Flying Kiwis news, and a bit of NBL basketball. I did see Tom Vodanovich has picked up another NBL gig with Southeast Melbourne, so we might also break down that move for Tom Vodanovich. But if you haven't already, make sure you're checking out our website, thenichecache.com, because there is also that Auckland FC signings tracker, so you can stay up to date with all the Auckland FC signings and any background information, because old mate here with us, the footballing guru, he's got all the background information you need to know about these Kiwi footballers, especially being signed by Auckland FC. Not to be confused with Michaela Foster, who signed with Auckland United. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think that might have thrown a few people off there, the Michaela Foster, especially because they also announced it as like ex-Phoenix player, which technically is true. But if she's signing with Auckland United, she's not going from a professional deal to suddenly not being able to get another professional deal. She is playing with Auckland United to stay fit ahead of the Olympics, quite obviously. And that is like, when she used to play for Northern Rovers before signing for the Phoenix, they were coached by Ben Bate and had most of the squad that's now plays for Auckland United, who Ben Bate moved to Auckland United. He took a bunch of that team with him, including like some of her close friends. And I think including a couple of like ex-Phoenix players too. Chloe Knott's playing for them, and Saskia Vosper's playing for them. So if anything, her signing with Auckland United says that she is more likely to re-sign with the Wellington Phoenix, which I already expected was going to happen. And now I think that only adds to that expectation. So yeah, no one freak out about that. And that has got nothing to do with Auckland FC, who don't have a women's team in year one. They will bring a women's team in year two. They're sort of doing one at a time, which unfortunately it's always the women who have to wait till the second time when that happens. But I can understand the logic, even if it is, not ideal. It is what it is.
Yeah, so to be clear, Auckland FC and Auckland United are two different entities.
Yeah, and Auckland City is a third different entity. There's maybe a few too many of these teams going around. I don't know.
Oh, it's good because I need to learn this myself. So I'm sure there's some listeners who might need to learn about this as well. Again, there's no like feeder club situation, no connection, no official capacity. There's no connection, no official connection between these three Auckland teams: Auckland FC, Auckland United, and Auckland City. Like, there's no feeder system.
Even though Auckland FC have signed players from both of them. But no, there's nothing official. But they do seem to be trying to get relationships with all of the Northern League clubs. So that does seem to be something that they're working on. But there's this isn't a Manchester City, Melbourne City kind of situation.
Yeah, you went a bit extravagant there. I'm just talking like they're all in Auckland, you know, like they're all right there. So you could assume that Auckland FC, they're getting players from Auckland United, who are their reserve grade team, or Auckland City. Like it makes sense for one of those teams to be a direct reserve grade outfit for Auckland FC in the same
Well,
city.
guess
Not
what? Because next year they're going to put an Auckland FC team into the Northern League, which means that the Northern League will have Auckland City, Auckland United, and Auckland FC. So
awesome.
if it's confusing now in theory, it's going to be more confusing next year in practice.
Wowee. Shout out to the local football circuit because you cover that every single Monday in our newsletter via Substack, thenichecache.substack.com. If you Hopefully you're reading the website because that's where we go deep into various matters, especially the New Zealand team. So we provide a lot of information about New Zealand cricket, New Zealand rugby league, New Zealand football, New Zealand basketball. And then this newsletter thing that we send out every Monday and Friday via Substack, thenichecache.substack.com. Sign up because every Monday there's a domestic football roundup. So you can learn all about the Auckland Cities, the Auckland United, the Auckland FCs, as well as Nelson Suburbs, Coastal Spirit, Wellington Olympic. What else do we have here? Any other fun little domestic football pockets? The West Coast Rangers. Shout out to the Rangers. They're doing their thing on the West Coast as well. So make sure you're signed up to our newsletter via Substack. That comes out for free every Monday and Friday. What can you find in our newsletter? Just a whole lot of New Zealand sport. Like that's all we're here to do, nothing else. So you can find a lot of New Zealand sport in our newsletter. This Monday edition, the Breach Territory newsletter. Lots of NBL stats, lots of NBL information. Even chucked in the new little Homebrew music video, 80 Down Scenic, which is another banger from Homebrew. I named a Kiwis team with no New Zealand Warriors. Because guess what? New Zealand Kiwis defeated Australia 30-0 last year with one Warrior in Shans Nicol-Clockstar, and fresh after Keanu Kinney's performance, and no disrespect to Nicol-Clockstar, but the Warriors suck, so I'm not going to chuck any Warriors into that Kiwis team. So I just named it a Kiwis team with no New Zealand Warriors. Let's drop it right now. Keanu Kinney, Ronaldo Mulatalo, Jermaine Sako, Joseph Manu, Matthew Tomoko, Jerome Hughes, Dylan Brown, James Fisher-Harris, Moses Leota, Joseph Tapine, Britton Nakora, Isaiah Papali'i, hooker. We got Jeremy Marshall-King starting, and we got Brandon Smith coming off the bench, as well as Nelson Asofa-Solomona, Leo Thompson, and Griffin Neame. As awesome as Kieran Foran was, I couldn't find a spot for him there. But Kieran Foran's mana is undeniable, and regardless of what's happening, like he shows up for Aotearoa Kiwis footy every chance he gets. We talked about that last year. He was starting hooker in that win against Australia. But if we got Marshall King and Brandon Smith healthy, and I don't really want to shake up that halves combination, Jerome Hughes, Dylan Brown, let's just chuck Kieran Foran, Kaumatua, always in the squad. He can have an official Kaumatua status, or he can just be a coach. I don't care. He needs to be in the squad. He needs to be in every single Aotearoa Kiwi squad possible. But we don't know when the next Aotearoa Kiwi squad is going to be, because who knows when they're playing footy, you know? It's I love State of Origin period because it reminds me of where are the Kiwis? Where are the Kiwis? That team was in the newsletter. Lots of exciting Warriors stats and bits of information as well, including the Warriors helped the Gold Coast Titans get their biggest crowd of the season on the Gold Coast. And it was the first time the Gold Coast Titans have drawn more than 15,000 people to their stadium this season. And they got 22,700. So that's the Warriors effect. And might I add, every crowd at Mount Smart's over 20,000. So on the Gold Coast, they're struggling to get over 15,000. Mount Smart, it's always over 20,000. And the Warriors drew 22,000. Let's say that's 7,000 hearty Warriors fans showed up there. And the Warriors, they showed you how much they cared with a great loss there. So shout out to the Warriors for rewarding the faith of a very excitable Gold Coast Warriors crowd. One last thing from the newsletter. I don't think we're going to discuss much Blackcaps in this podcast, so I do want to throw this out here as a little tease of what we cover in our newsletter via Substack, thenichecache.substack.com. This is the Monday wrap on a Tuesday, discussing our Monday dispatch, but there'll be another one on Friday. Stay tuned. I went hard and fast through each format. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. Like, what are the Blackcaps? What do they need? What am I looking for with the Blackcaps in each format? T20s, more aggression. We just need more hitters. We need more confidence. Like, let's take the game on. Because to be honest, the old Kane Williamson approach was a bit passive, bit conservative. Let's get ruckus. Let's bang some sixes. Let's have a bit of fun. More vibrant T20 cricket. ODIs. ODIs, you need expertise. And we saw this at the last ODI World Cup because no one was playing ODI cricket. Then suddenly they play an ODI World Cup and it's like, oh, ODI cricket's pretty hard. You got to bat for 50 overs. You got to bowl 10 overs instead of 4 overs. ODI cricket's a tricky format, and the Blackcaps need expertise. They'll be playing a lot of ODI cricket, apparently, according to your schedule, a schedule that can't be found anywhere else on the interwebs, not through New Zealand Cricket and not through Cricket Info. So hopefully the Blackcaps are playing a lot more ODI cricket, and that will be important. And I think cricketers like Nathan Smith, Dean Foxcroft, Zach Foulkes, and Josh Clarkson, who has already played for the Blackcaps, I think they're going to be quite important. If they can build up their one-day experience, and especially for the Blackcaps, I just start getting repetitions for the Blackcaps in ODI cricket, I think they're going to be important over the next few years because they are lads, and how about this as a gauge? They can bowl 10 overs and score 30 runs. And I think that is just something to stash away, whether you're coaching your little cricket team, maybe you're doing some winter training. Just think about, can you, especially one-day cricket, this changes for the other formats. I'll build on it and I'll try come up with something else for the other formats. But can you score 30 runs and bowl 10 overs? Because if you're an expensive bowler, you're not going to bowl 10 overs. If you're a crappy bowler, you're not bowling 10 overs. So you need to be able to bowl 10 overs, but can you also score 30 runs? And I don't know about your math, but if you got 11 blokes who score 30 runs, that seems to me to be 330 runs.
Plus extras.
Plus the extras, 335 runs.
Depends who you're playing on that one.
Let's simplify it. Because I actually had to do that maths beforehand. So the 10 I can do straight off the noggin. 30 runs, 10 batters score 30 runs. Then you get a bit of a give and take, right? Like someone's going to get a duck, number 11, he's taking the piss, he's not doing anything. So let's go 10 batters score 30 runs, 300 runs right there. So ODI cricket, the Blackcaps, I reckon they need to start developing players with specific one-day skills. And I think batting and bowling, good fielding is key in that. Can you bowl 10 overs and score 30 runs? Nathan Smith, Zach Foulkes, Josh Clarkson, they can score 30 runs and bowl 10 overs. Dean Foxcroft is more score 50 runs, bowl 5 overs. Just made that up, so not sure what that means, but I do like the idea the Blackcaps need a bit more consistent experience in one-day cricket, which apparently is coming, and in Test cricket they need some bloody grit. Because if they're not winning, they're losing. And if they're losing by a hefty margin. I ran through all the Test losses since the start of 2020, and they have only one Test loss by less than 5 wickets or 150 runs. So that's telling me either the Black Caps win all the close games, which might be useful, but they've also been given a few hidings in Test cricket. Maybe as I'm talking through this, like the Black Caps don't play like Kiwis anymore, you know? Because T20 cricket, let's go out and have some fun. Let's whack boundaries. Let's be aggressive. We can't play with the fear. Let's play like vibrant, energetic Kiwis. Test cricket. There's no grit. That's not very Kiwi. What do you make of these 3 format assessments for the Black Caps?
Well, you know what I think spans over all 3 of those formats, and it's like, you know, there's scope between all 3 of them because we've just seen a T20 team which we thought was probably the best they've sent to a World Cup in terms of the balance of their squad, and then they played pretty bang averagely, with a number of factors contributing to that, but you know, their own tactics certainly aren't excused within that. The ODI stuff, I think, is probably their strongest format, quite comfortably at the moment. The Test stuff, you see, when they're good, they're good. When they're bad, again, yeah, where's the grit to hang around when things are going against you? Like, they're a team that can get out in front and win Test matches, but they're not necessarily a team that's hanging around when the going's not so good to give themselves a chance of a result, be that a draw or maybe a thrilling comeback win or whatever, in the way that they were consistently able to do through their best sort of period over the last 10 years, but excluding probably the 2 most recent years. I think the bit that crosses over between a lot of that is this idea about the Black Caps having so many all-format dudes. Like, a lot of their Test players are in the T20 side, and those guys are also in the ODIs. Like, they work with a small selection of cricketers who they trust to play in all the formats. And I don't know if that's increasingly a great idea. Like, I know it's not specifically a tactical thing. It's also like we only have a limited population, so therefore you've got to just, you don't have as many players to choose from. You got to make do with what you got. There's also the financial stresses there, and only having a certain amount of contracts. Well, there is something that might be happening with the Black Caps around contracts and some of their best players not having them. Kane Williamson doesn't have one right now. Lockie Ferguson apparently doesn't want one. Trent Bolt doesn't have one. Jimmy Neesham doesn't have one. Like, perhaps Colin Munro doesn't have one. But by the way, Colin Munro popping up doing all the Sky TV analysis stuff for a T20 World Cup, which he out of the blue said that he really wanted to be a part of when he hadn't been a part of the scene for ages. And then the Black Caps sort of humoring that idea as overseas media really hammered on it. And then him very predictably not being selected for that World Cup squad, and then him getting to analyze the World Cup squad as they were absolutely terrible was just a strange set of circumstances. It's just weird how that one worked out. And I bet Colin Munro probably had a part of him that quite enjoyed that experience. But I obviously jest when I include his name in there. But if there are a certain amount of players who are earning their living outside of the Black Caps thing, then that presumably, if the Black Caps can balance that with dudes still being available to play, then you do kind of increase the amount of players who are earning a full-time living playing international cricket. And maybe that helps them expand things to a point where you can have dudes who are just T20 specialists who, because like, who is there in the current squad? Maybe Finn Allen, but he seems to be in most ODI squads when he's available. I don't really know that there is anyone in that team who is specifically a T20 player. And it is quite a tricky format where I think that can be quite handy. A lot of other nations do have guys who are, obviously they're trying to play all formats, but they might specialize in one. And the T20 format seems to be the easiest to do that because you can just go around the world honing your craft. It's like a 12-month calendar at this point, just playing T20 cricket. You've got to find some time to be available for internationals if you want that to be the case. But this also goes the other way too, though, because who are the two grittiest players of the Blackcaps' best era, like the World Test Championship winning era? Like, who would you say were the two grittiest players in that side?
BJ Watling, Neil Wagner.
I knew you'd get there right off the bat. What do those two guys have in common? They only played Test cricket. So when a Test match came along, it wasn't like, oh, well, we lost. That's a bummer, but we got an ODI series to prepare for against Sri Lanka or something like that. It was, no, I get a small handful of Test match opportunities per year. I am not going to waste a single one of these opportunities. Even if I'm coming into bat at 5 for 30, I'm still going to grind my way through this and do BJ Watling things, or Neil Wagner's bowling, I don't know, 10 and 15 overs in a row or something ridiculous into the breeze in Wellington with Australia 300 for 2 or whatever. He's still going to do that because this is what he does, and there's no backup option. There's no fallback. This is his summer of cricket right here. Like, they don't have that at the moment in the Test team, really, and they don't have that in the ODI team. They don't have that in the T20 team. And I wonder if that might be something that, if you cultivated that, would significantly improve the old, like, every game is important, we like no days off kind of mentality that perhaps they don't have right now.
I agree. I think that is a benefit of the meaningless contracts for Kiwi cricket fans, because when someone bows out at the top level, it's just another full-time contract for Will O'Rourke. The someone is going to benefit from Kane Williamson having a casual part-time contract, and that is going to benefit New Zealand cricket, because I do think there are enough good cricketers and there is enough talent to have specialists in the formats. I don't think they need many specialists, because I think the young cricketers are very skillful, very talented. This is going to be a theme throughout the podcast. We've got fascinating situations. And the Blackcaps' fascinating situation is how I think the young cricketers might be just as good, if not more good, better, more gooder than a lot of the senior Blackcaps. And if that's the case, and there's a lot of them, so I don't necessarily know how you can. Some of them will be specialists, some of them won't be. But there's so much talent.
You don't have to specialize forever either, do you? Like,
yeah,
Glenn Phillips was a T20 specialist for a while, and then he grew into being an all-format player. Like, but then there's no other specialists like coming into. But that's how you get your opportunity. One format, there's an open spot, you take it, you build towards it. Someone else is moving into specialist spots, and it happens at the other end of someone's career as well, where someone might retire from white ball to play an extra bit of red ball or whatever. There's different ways that can come about.
Yeah, I just think there's no need to worry about the talent coming through, and they will. I think they're going to sort through these matters. Like, someone who comes to mind as a T20 specialist is Bevan Jacobs, Canterbury slugger, who showed a bit of his talent in the Super Smash this year. I think he's someone who can add to the Blackcaps in T20 cricket, just as an example. But to go against that specialist idea, I was thinking, like, how do you rebuild the T20 team? Well, top 3 batters, like batting first, second, and third, let's go Fennell, Rachin, Ravindra, and Glenn Phillips. Like, there's no need to fluff around. This is New Zealand T20 cricket. You put those 3 lads at the top of any of the T20 order, bang, that is going to be exciting, it's going to be aggressive, and it's going to be vibrant. I don't know how that looks for the other formats, but I was just thinking about that as I jotted down these notes and as I wrote down these paragraphs about the Blackcaps in our newsletter yesterday via Substack. So sign up to that. Comes out every Monday and Friday evening, full of New Zealand sports information. Couple bangers, couple tunes every week, and everything else niche cache that you require. We're also on Patreon if you want to support us on Patreon, patreon.com/EL niche cache. And we record our subscriber podcast strictly for the Patreon whānau on Thursdays. You can also upgrade your free Substack subscription to a paid Substack subscription and access that subscriber podcast as well. This week we'll probably preview the Warriors versus Broncos. Got a bit of White Ferns. They will be playing Wednesday evening into Thursday. All Whites will be playing around that time as well. So we've got a few things on the radar with our subscriber podcast, which is a bonus podcast for the generous folks funding the Niche Cache. So if you're a member of the Patreon whānau, you got a paid Substack subscription, and you want us to talk about something, you got a question, comment, or query, hit us up on those platforms, and we'll chat through it on our subscriber podcast. You can also hit us up on Buy Me a Coffee, if that's your buzz as well. We've already gone deep into some Aotearoa sporting depths. And we need some mindfulness just to calm us down again.
Yeah, the 25-minute plus mindfulness entry has got to be a new record, I reckon. This one is drawn from a movie I was watching the other day, because the great Donald Sutherland passed away, one of the great actors of his generation, and I was watching a couple of his films in tribute on Friday. Got in some Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the Kelly's Heroes. But before that, while I was working, I had something on in the background, which was a more obscure one called Little Murders, which he's only in for like 10 minutes. It's mostly an Elliot Gould film. Bit of a weird movie. I didn't love it, to be honest. But there was like a 10-minute section where Donald Sutherland just turns up with doing this big speech thing and just steals the movie for a while. And within that speech, he said something which I thought, man, that's good. I'm writing that down for mindfulness. Where it went a little something like this: nothing can hurt you if you do not see it as being hurtful. Nothing can destroy you if you do not see it as destructive.
I concur. Don't really have a lot to add there. It speaks for itself. It is a different perspective on like in your mind you can just flip things into a positive. That's how easy it is. Like in your mind you can just flick that switch and suddenly there's some sort of Einstein quote where it's like, if you see the world as shitty, it's shitty. If you see the world as beautiful, it's beautiful. Like that type of thinking.
Yeah, that's pretty much the same idea in different words. Yeah, like we have more power than we realize over the stuff that like affects us, and we can just kind of choose not to be affected. Like it is kind of that simple in many cases, not every case, but in many cases. And I think from this perspective, like nothing hurts you if you don't see it as being hurtful. It shows how often people like preconceive their troubles. Like bad things happen because you expect bad things to happen, whereas you can just remove that factor altogether from your life. It doesn't have to be there. You're anticipating danger, and therefore danger occurs. But it only occurs because you anticipated it. Like you've sort of negatively wished it into existence, which you don't have to do. You can just not do that.
I reckon Razor, Scott Robertson, All Blacks coach, I reckon he's got some mindfulness quotes. I think he's got a little notebook just full of little gems that he's picked up along the way. And this is a fascinating situation. We don't talk a lot of All Blacks rugby here at the Niche Cache, but this is a fascinating situation that I want to lead into the Warriors' fascinating situation. We've just come off the Blackcaps' fascinating situation, where I think some of the young talent might be underrated as far as how good it is and comparing to senior players. But you got Scott Robertson, All Blacks coach. Now, first and foremost, not first and foremost, I'm getting my words a bit jumbled up here, but this is a fascinating situation because Scott Robertson, All Blacks coach, he is actually known as Razor, the All Blacks coach, right? So, and yesterday for the All Blacks announcement, the title of the announcement on Sky TV was Razor's Squad. It was the Razor squad announcement. It wasn't the All Blacks squad, it was the Razor squad. So you've not only got the All Blacks being known as Razor's squad, but you've got Scott Robertson only being referred to as Razor. That made me chuckle. Also made me chuckle when he did a whole speech after the squad was announced, and after his speech, he does an interview on the stage. It's like, you just did a speech. You don't need to do another interview to say all the same shit again. You know, you can just be on the stadium. However, that's happening, and this is fascinating because now Razor is a character. And now everything about him is delivered through the Razor lens. And I like Scott Robertson. He's a winner. I love coaching. I love winners. I love coaches who can bring people together to win, to succeed, to be happy. Like that's the ultimate thing. Deep respect as an Aucklander for the Canterbury Super Rugby team. Still a bit iffy on the old Crusaders name, given what's happened around there. Let's be honest, it's a bit iffy. But the Canterbury Super Rugby team, Scott Robertson, he's the man. He's just an awesome coach. Right now, we are transitioning from Scott Robertson, the awesome winning coach, into Razor and Razor's squad. And I don't think it's Scott Robertson's not at fault here. He's just being himself, but now everything around him is being presented and delivered through a Razor perspective. Not his perspective, not Scott Robertson's perspective, but all the people doing the stuff, they got their Razor goggles on. So the word that comes to mind is caricature, but that, I don't even know what that really means, and I don't like to use big words that a lot of people don't know what it means. Like, we're the Everyday Jokers podcast. So can you think of, like, it's like a caricature, but he's not playing a character, he's being himself, but everyone else is playing a character as if Scott Robertson has made everyone view everything through the Razor lens. Most notably when I was watching the little documentary. He's already got a documentary.
Multi-part too.
Multi-part documentary for a bloke who hasn't started coaching yet. That's very optimistic, right? It's very optimistic. I think it's Hammett. Mark Hammett might be the dude. He's sitting there and he met, like, the documentary is called Razor's Connections or something. Connections in the title. And every little segment, Hammett or whoever he is, he mentions connections. To the point where I'm thinking, did Scott Robertson executive produce this little multi-part documentary series? Because every question's like, oh, how do you're building the connections? I see you walking down the beach, you got some connections, bruh. You're winning because you got the connections. How do you build the connections? It's all about the connections. So that, as well as the squad announcement, everything is being delivered through the Razor lens, which gets me to, it's a bit baseball-y. Like, it's not Brendan McCullum as coaching England Test cricket, it's baseball. Right? Scott Robertson is not the All Blacks coach. This is the Razor era. Like, it's cool to have the name and to package it in entertaining ways and all this other stuff, but it's a fascinating situation because all this has happened before he's coached the game.
Yeah, at least Brendan McCullum got to win a couple test matches before people realized what was going on. And then definitely that got to a cartoonish level of the reaction coming before the reality, or I don't know quite how to explain that, but that's similar to what we're seeing here, eh? Where it's like people treat him like he's a cartoon character in the real world. Like he's bloody Who Framed Roger Rabbit, or one of those kind of movies where you got the cartoons and the real life people acting together.
Mm.
He's like the cartoon, but he's not a cartoon. He's just being treated like one. Just this weird over familiarity, which I don't know. I think people, honestly, at the moment, I think New Zealand media are just kind of freaking out about the fact they got an All Blacks coach with personality. Because they're like other dudes have had personality, but it's the personality of Graham Henry is like strict school teacher. The personality of Steve Hansen is just like gruff. That's just his personality. One word is gruff, you know. And those dudes were funny. Like those dudes had lines. Those dudes had jokes. They were good in interviews, but they had a certain appearance to them. And whereas Razor is just oh no, I did it myself. I called him Razor. There you go. But I looked up the thing, and there's Razor connections, and there's also Razor lessons learned. So look forward for that one. There's some more cliches coming.
Win or learn. It will be very interesting to see how the old Scott Robertson All Blacks coach performs. It seems like to me that, yeah, I want to draw a clear line between Scott Robertson, All Blacks coach, and Razor, because when you're in the team environment, like they've all got names, right? Like it was Ted, Shag, Foz, Razor. Like, they've all got the names. That's cool. When you're with your mates at a pub, you're gonna refer to Steve Hansen as Shag. I think he was probably the funniest of this group, old Shag. He did have a few bangers in his humorous quiver.
Flush the dunny and move on
Yeah,
has moved into the greater cultural lexicon. That's
for
that's an
sure, for
all-timer,
sure.
that one.
And the Warriors need to flush the dunny and move on, but don't think that's going to be as easy as old Shag made it sound. But it's very strange when all these external forces are developing this character of Razor. And I like Scott Robertson as a coach. I want him to win. But this everything around the All Blacks at the moment is just kind of cringy, and he hasn't coached the game yet. And as soon as he loses, the same people who built him up as Razor, the connections guru, the leader of New Zealand, they're going to cut him down, because you know what happened and what has happened and what will happen and what is happening is that's what happens with the Warriors. When it's hard to I was going to say when the Warriors sucked, but they kind of suck right now. So I'm kind of working in a few different timelines here. But you remember, at my Warriors view, my vista, and something we discussed quite a few times was the New Zealand media would build up the Warriors beyond sensible expectations. Like over the last 10 years, there's not been a whole lot to suggest the Warriors should be in the top 8 for that year. But expectations were always set higher than that without any real rationale behind it. So as soon as those expectations aren't met, well, then you get the deep dives into what's gone wrong with the Warriors. It's like the same person who's writing the deep dive into what's gone wrong with the Warriors was the person that was telling you that they can win the NRL when there's no reason for that. And that is what I'm sensing with Razor. Like, people are creating a character, people are playing into this whole Razor fairy tale Roger Rabbit type of situation, but we all know what's going to happen if they lose. And it's hopefully for Scott Robertson's sake, that doesn't happen. you may have noticed I'm using some different language there. Scott Robertson, All Blacks coach, and Razor's squad. And this is something
Razor Rabbit, yeah.
Razor Rabbit, there you go. This is something I'm taking into the Warriors. So the Warriors have a fascinating situation, and something that when thinking about language used, you see it a few times, like, oh, they need to select the young players again. The young players were winning, the senior players are losing. I've written that myself, but then I kind of hit this little stumbling block where Bunty Afoa is not a young player. And this is the crux of my language issue with the Warriors, is it's not like the young players are better, it's just the players who aren't playing. It's and I moved towards using emerging players. Bunty Afoa is not an emerging player. So it feels quite clear cut, right? Like there's the B team and the A team. The A team is losing right now, and to be honest, the A team was losing prior to that game against the Panthers. The B team are the winning team. I don't think it's as clear cut as young players versus older players. And the reason I bring up Bunty Afoa, because there's this dude, Bunty Afoa, who has won 56% of his games this year. He started at prop in the win over the Panthers and the win over the Dolphins. Those are his only games playing over 30 minutes this season. But Bunty Afoa isn't good enough to get game time in a team that just got routed by the Devil 66-6. And again, another reason why I'm bringing up Bunty Afoa is because we got a clear difference in winning percentage with another key warrior. And Shaun Johnson is not the reason the Warriors suck right now. But these facts are too illuminating to ignore. Shaun Johnson's lost 6 games in a row as the halfback for the Warriors. Shaun Johnson has a winning percentage this season of 25%. Reminder, Bunty Afoa is winning at 56%. Shaun Johnson is winning at 25%. I'd prefer it for ease of delivery if this was Shaun Johnson's worst season for win percentage. But it's not. The only season of Shaun Johnson's career since 2011 with a lower win percentage than this year was the disastrous 2022. If he's winning at 25% this year, what do you think his 2022 win percentage was?
Let me think. It can't be that much lower, surely. It was 20% or something.
24%.
Okay, so it's close. If he loses, he might not play this weekend, but if he does play this weekend and loses, he'll probably be below that then. There's not much buffer room there between 25 and 24.
Yeah, but the fact that they are 1 percentage difference is alarming. Because 2022, that was when Shaun Johnson and the Warriors, they were based in Australia. I chalked that up. That was the horrible pandemic era where the pandemic was over, but the Warriors were still based in Australia, so they still had a disadvantage compared to every NRL team, and that was most evident in Shaun Johnson's performances. 2024, where everything's honkadory, he's 1 percentage better than 2022. Like, this is alarming. Shaun Johnson's 2 worst winning seasons in the NRL. His only seasons below 30% winning are 2022 and 2024. The circumstances couldn't be more different. One was horrible. This is meant to be a building year off after a successful 2023. But somehow, Shaun Johnson, as the halfback for the Warriors, let's say he's just as bad this year as he was to 2022. That is crazy. Now, it's hard to...
borderline Dally M season in between somehow.
Yeah.
This doesn't make much sense.
So, here you go. So, these are... It's not just 30%, it's 35%. These are his only seasons below 35% winning. Last year, that Dally M kinda season, 68%, that's his highest win rate in his career. So his highest and his lowest win rates have come in the last 3 years. In between that, you've got this year, which is 25%, 1% higher than 2022. You mentioned that he might not play this week. I hope he doesn't play. I don't wish him to be injured. I don't really want to pick on Shaun Johnson because it is like it's low-hanging fruit often. But this is another thing when you start to look into New Zealand media, you see a lot of like when the Warriors were winning, it was all about, oh, how do they fit Shaun Johnson back? Like, what's going to happen when Shaun Johnson's back? Shaun Johnson's coming back. Shaun Johnson is now available. He's here. Big boost for the Warriors. He's the most important Warriors player. It is kind of insane to say that your most important player is winning 25% of his games this season. Like, 25% winning does not suggest Shaun Johnson is of any importance to the Warriors. Now, of course, the Warriors aren't winning many games as a team, and yet you've got someone like Bunty Afoa who is winning more than half of his games when he plays. And we've also got situations. You've got the Tamaire Martin as the leading halfback. He was winning games. Now Shaun Johnson comes back and it's not as easy. So it's all a bit messy, but it is to say, like, this is a fascinating situation. Because the quote-unquote best player, someone who was really good last year, but I don't think he was as extravagantly awesome. Like, he wasn't the only good player for the Warriors last year, as many folks made it seem. And, yeah, something just doesn't add up there. If Shaun Johnson's the most important player, why can't he win games? He's played in every loss this season. He's lost 6 games in a row. And like the Blackcaps, like the Warriors aren't losing close games. His last 6 losses, which are a recent string of losses for the Warriors. Dragons, 30-12. Titans, that was a close one. 24-27, but that was at Mount Smart on Anzac Day, which was meant to be a big occasion for the Warriors, and suddenly the Titans have 2 wins over the Warriors, which puts them in the same ballpark as the Storm. Suddenly the Titans are just as good as the Storm. Holy cow. Knights, 14-8 loss. Roosters, 38-18. Storm, 38-24. Titans, 66-6. Yucky. This gets into a fascinating situation because Shaun Johnson's a senior player. And what did we have against the Storm last week? On that Monday newsletter, after losing to the Storm, I laid out all the errors made by senior players. Tohu Harris sloppy play the ball. Dylan Walker rolling a dude onto his head. Jackson Ford knock on. Dylan Waitane-Zelezniak, sin bin. Marcelo Montoya, sin bin. Like, all the senior players decided to make an error against the team who don't need your errors to win the game. But if you give them the errors, they're going to absolutely destroy you, as the Storm did. Then we get into the Gold Coast Titans. A lot of senior players on the field again, and they get rolled 66-6. So the fascinating situation here with the Warriors is this disparity between the B team, the second tier players, and the top tier players. Right now, the top tier players are losing, and the second tier players, they had a couple wins. They filled us all with confidence. Like Panthers win, awesome. Dolphins win, awesome. Somewhere in between, you had the Cowboys game. A few senior players were back. A few youngsters were still there. That was cool. We go full back into senior top tier player crew. They lose at home to the Storm. Then they get rolled to the Titans. And to deepen my intrigue here, we've got a situation where throughout the season, we have seen in stages how the style of footy isn't working, because the Warriors, or the shape, the defensive structures, none of that's working. And it wasn't working like round 1 against the Sharks. What happened in that game? It was at Mount Smart. Again, the Warriors are losing at Mount Smart, so that's a red flag straight away. The Warriors had lots of possession against the Sharks, and they couldn't score any points. Let me go back into that game. Let me check those stats just to make sure. Make sure I'm not talking too much shit here. Because I remember the Warriors were just all over the Sharks, but they couldn't get the job done. That's because the Warriors had 54% of the ball. They had 29 minutes, 44 seconds. The Sharks had 25 minutes of possession. The Warriors were completing at 81%. The Sharks were completing at 76%. The Warriors had 234 runs. The Sharks had 187 runs. The Warriors had quicker play the balls, 3.34 seconds. The Sharks were at 3.47 seconds. The Sharks made more missed tackles, 35 missed tackles, 31 missed tackles. And yet the Sharks won at Mount Smart. So the Warriors had more footy, and they couldn't score any points against the Sharks. So that was a warning sign about the style. And since then, since round 1, we've seen that style of footy not work. So Andrew Webster's style of footy that was very successful last season hasn't been successful this season, just straight up and down. And we saw it against the Titans again early in that game when the Warriors were still kind of in the contest. Nice little shift out to Marcelo Montoya on the wing. Doesn't get close to the try line because the Titans just slide off him. So all this shape that we fell in love with last year is just leading to tackles going over the sideline. Or the little intricate passing, it's not working. And then over the course of the season, along with that style not working, we have seen the B team, the second tier players, the youngsters and Bunty Afoa, we've seen them win games. We've seen them play better than the senior players. So we've got step 1, the style's not working. Step 2, we've seen the second tier players outperform the senior players. Step 3, we saw major attitude issues against the Titans. Like, you don't lose 66-6 against the Gold Coast Titans if you're showing up with the right effort, right intensity, right attitude. So that's 3-stage process: style issues, second tier outperforming the top tier, and a major attitude warning sign. None of that fills you with excitement about what's going to happen this weekend at Mount Smart against the Broncos. Because that's a home game, but as we've seen, as I've laid out a few times in this little rant, Mount Smart's no fortress right now. And the Broncos need a win. During the game against the Titans, again, when the game was kind of in the balance for 10 minutes or so there at the start of the game, might have been Michael Ennis, might have been someone else. And along with another good commentary note, the commentators are kind of crappy sometimes they're all right. In this game against the Titans, they did highlight Lofiana Khan Pereira cruised from the corner flag to the post to score his try, and no one got within a jiffy of him. No one cared enough to stop Cam Pereira and make him score his try in the corner. So if no one's caring enough to do that, obviously you're going to lose 66-6. But early in that game, one of the commentators said, this is a really important game for the Warriors. And they lost 66-6, you know. So now they're coming back to Mount Smart. This is a really important game for the Broncos, because the Broncos aren't trucking along as good as they were last season. So I don't want to say it's an important game for the Warriors, because if it's an important game for the Warriors, they probably don't care. They probably won't show up. They'll probably get 50 put on them. But this is a really important game for the Broncos. They're going to Mount Smart. They need a win. Who knows what's going to happen? Very interesting times trying to assess where the Warriors are at, because I go bigger picture, and I'm not that mad. Like, James Fisher-Harris isn't standing for any of this shit. And the New South Wales Cup Warriors, what happened on the weekend? I think they defeated your Dragons, but your Dragons did get a big win in Jersey Flegg, so shout out. The Warriors won another New South Wales Cup game with 10 under-21 players in their team. So usually they're winning with 11 under-21 players. This week they only won with 10 under-21 players. Now they're 5th. They are one of the best New South Wales Cup teams, roughly, me being generous, with over half of their team of 17 players being under-21s. That is positive. That's optimistic. That is a good system in place there. Fisher-Harris is coming next season. Like, it's maybe Fanua Blake's gone. So it's a bigger picture. I'm thinking, I'm not that mad. I'm not that upset. I can see a way out of this whole, in the bigger picture. But in the shitstorm of this season, this is a crazy little period for the Warriors.
Yeah, like, genuinely insane little period. It's watching that game on Saturday night was just, I couldn't comprehend what was happening, which, I mean, yeah. I mean, I'll come back to that idea in a sec, because there were two things that you said there that I had sort of like trigger ideas upon. One is the Sean Johnson situation of like aside from the winning percentage, aside from however he might be performing this year, aside from the whatever injury clouds he might be playing through or dealing with or whatever, specifically about the way he's covered, that's like a microcosm of that Warriors idea you were talking about earlier, build him up so that you can bring him down. Like, that happens with Sean Johnson as a reflection of what happens with the team. And sometimes it doesn't even have to happen with the team because they just only focus on Sean Johnson and tell, this guy's so great, and then they lose, and then suddenly this guy, what's wrong with him? It's all his fault kind of thing, which it's not all his fault. Not playing nearly as well as he did last year, but perhaps he's more of a system halfback than people give him credit for. He's certainly not the game-breaking sort of improviser that he was at the start of his career, where he just, get on the outside, step a dude, line break, there we go. And if the system's not working, your system halfback, who's supposed to be the guy throwing the last pass or putting the kick in, of course he's not going to look that good, right? So it's part of that is him not playing as well, part of it's the team not being as good around him, blah, blah, blah. But there's definitely that, there's definitely just this weird way in which Sean Johnson becomes the spotlight guy, build him up to tear him down, yeah.
And that system has changed a lot in recent weeks. So I think the system's changed season to season because we're not seeing the same stuff that we saw last season. But also in recent weeks, like, they rushed Sean Johnson back, and they rushed him back just so they could play a different system to what they were playing the week before in the Cowboys game. So they rushed someone back to change the system. And the system obviously didn't work. And I think there are a few tweaks I have to go back and watch, because like at some point, nothing from that loss to the Titans really applies, because like game was over pretty quickly. But it did seem like I do feel like the system changed again. So we'll get to your second point, but just to, because you mentioned the system there, which got me hot and bothered. Sean Johnson, I think last like I agree, he is a system halfback because he was successful last year playing the system, kicking long, controlling the game, getting the ball where it needs to go, using the shape, the intricate shape. You got Dylan Walker passing, Tohu Harris passing, edge back rowers. You got Shans Nickel-Krokstad sweeping out the back. Like, we haven't seen Shans Nickel-Krokstad pass the ball to the winger for a try very often this season, aside from that one on the left against the Storm, which was actually quite a cool play because week before against the Cowboys, he's playing on the right, Chanel Harris-Tavita on the left, Tamaida Martin swinging both sides. Then we go to the Storm. Sean Johnson, they rush him back just so he can sit out on the right edge, Tamaida Martin swinging both sides, and suddenly Shans Nickel-Krokstad's on the left edge, and he does make a play on that left edge to set up a try. But then we go to the Titans game, and Shans Nickel-Krokstad's back on the right, Tamaida Martin's on the left, and Sean Johnson's pulling the strings. 3 different games with 3 different attacking systems. So none of that is conducive with bringing out the best footy of Sean Johnson, who we kind of think epitomized the system. You know, if he was the system last year, if he was playing the leading role in the system last year, horrible footy over the last few weeks, the system's changing every game.
Yeah, I wonder if he's thinking whether that Roosters offer is still on the table. Might want to reconsider. The other point I had isn't so much to do with the Warriors, because in the Warriors is the rare case where like maybe this is actually completely the logical correct way given to respond given what we've been seeing. But the whole like play the youngsters because the senior team is losing idea, that just gave me flashbacks to what people continually say about the football Ferns, even though they are playing the youngsters and there's only a couple of senior players who have been to more than like 2, maybe 3 major tournaments, which is, yeah, bafflingly weird. But that's, I think, maybe people not paying enough attention and just like to be negative about stuff. And I do think there's a bit of that about the Warriors too, where especially when you get to people judging Sean Johnson like he's a game-breaking type player and not the system halfback, and realizing if a system halfback is struggling, it's probably the system's fault. That maybe is one of those like someone doesn't know ball kind of ideas, you know. I don't want to be too sketchy on that because like I'm not going to pretend that I understand this stuff any better, but I'm also not going to sit here and make like grand judgments about who needs to be dropped and why things aren't working or whatever. But there does seem to be, just in general sporting terms, that is one of the first things that I think fans and sometimes media as well, but specifically fans, I think, lead this cause. It's like, well, if the team's losing, let's play the youngsters. Like that's just it's almost a knee-jerk reaction in a lot of ways, which is just like, I'm just making a statement on that. But in this case, it is maybe also the logical idea, which is why it gets weird, because it's not actually just a knee-jerk reaction, because we actually have seen a younger, less experienced team perform a lot better than the senior players in this side. But that just gets me thinking, like all the conversations we've had every week about the Warriors, and just the list of things we've said that aren't working in the way that they should. Like you ran through a bunch of them just then. It's like the system isn't working. Sean Johnson isn't playing as well as he was last year. There are attitude issues on the weekend. There's combinations and injuries definitely have been a factor in some of this, but also the coach being unwilling to make changes to the team until until injuries and suspensions force his hand on that. If you're getting attitude issues from your senior players, like maybe that is a little bit of a complacency, I can't be dropped kind of feeling. That might be something to consider. And we could go on. And I mean, the one that stuck out, we could probably list 20, 30 things that but like not that aren't new ideas, things that we have mentioned on the podcast over the week. But one that really stuck with me watching the Titans, and in particular old mate Khan Pereira and young mate Keanu Kinney run in circles, is that lack of pace in the Warriors. Because you even highlighted this. You mentioned those two specific players last week of like, well, these are dudes who you kind of hope aren't going to get space to run in because no one's going to be able to catch them. And guess what? Like they scored 6 tries between them in this game. No one could catch them. It's like these aren't. There are new issues being added each week, but also none of the old ones are being fixed. And maybe Fanua Blake is part of that too. And the like player who's leaving, who's hanging around in a team that's fine when everything's winning, no dramas. Like that when you start losing and have to draw into those extra reserves, like, and the dude who's like, well, I'm not going to be here next season, becomes a little bit of an issue. His stats are still really good, though, is where that gets a little bit funky. I think it's hard to scapegoat someone. It would be easy to scapegoat someone like that, but then also he's getting big meters. But then we have had attitude issues from him. He was dropped for a game for something weird, because he was dropped for a game for them saying he wasn't part of the huddle after a game, but then they named him in the team 2 days later and dropped him on the Wednesday. Like, the timeline didn't add up there, so there's probably a little bit more to do with that. But the issues that we've been seeing through the season are being added to, but none of them are being fixed, which is the very, very concerning aspect of this.
You said a lot there. I'm glad you did fix up your observation about how these teams are discussed, the football Ferns, the Warriors, because no other team in this discussion won with.
Yeah,
you mentioned
that's what makes this different, is that we actually saw it and they started winning.
And also Bunty Afoa, he's not a youngster. So again, it's not just play the young guys, it's play the guys who won the games, maybe is the best way to say it. Play the winners. I don't care if they're 40 years old, 15 years old. They won. Give them a crack. Play the winners. And part of that, you go to the speed stuff. The Warriors have no player, as I said before, no player who is fast for their position. Titans also had Aaron Clark, who's fast for a middle forward. But he's basically the Keanu Kinney of middle forwards, relative speed. The Warriors have fast players. Like Mawala Graham Telfer is showing how fast he is in New South Wales Cup every week. He did a job in the NRL, hasn't been cited since. Tain Tuaupiki, he's a live wire. He's got zip, he's got pizzazz, funk, speed. And you look around the NRL, there are a lot of these type of fullbacks now. Tain Tuaupiki, Reece Walsh, Jai Gray with the Rabbitohs. You got Chevy Stewart with the Raiders, Reece Walsh with the Broncos. Small, fast, vibrant fullbacks. The Warriors have one.
Or else Sloan at the Dragons.
Yeah, he's
not as good as some of those other guys, but he's small and fast.
He's not small. Like he's a big unit. But he plays like a small fullback is maybe the best way of saying it. He's not like a Gutherson, Nickel Krogstad, Dylan Edwards type of fullback. But the Warriors have what they need right there. Like, Warriors fans and maybe the team, they just want to see someone run it straight. The guy's right there. Bunty Afoa is right there. Tain Tuaupiki, he's a live wire. He's fast. He's exciting. He's in the New South Wales Cup team. He's right there. Mawala Graham Telfer is pretty damn quick by what I see. And his debut, he showed his speed in a defensive play, which was all effort. But he's not given another chance.
Speed, defense, effort?
Yeah.
All three of them?
And something you said about the Fanua Blake, I immediately started thinking about, like, if you're an NBA player, if you're an NBL player, you're playing in the NBL and you get X amount of possession, shots, touches, you can score 20 points. Like, scoring 20 points in that situation doesn't tell me you're an above average NBL player, NBA player.
Or above average locked in attitude type of aspect either. Just like you just shoot your shots.
If Chris Wood, if he's taken a billion shots from inside the box, because that's what happens, no one's going to say he's like one of the best strikers in the world. No, he's just getting the shots. The shots just come to him. He gets the shots because he's a professional footballer. If you're taking 20 runs in the NRL, you can put up 200 meters. I don't care who you are. So, like, if you're putting up 50 shots in an NBA game, you're going to score some points. Does you having that many runs, does you having that many stats help your team win games? There's not necessarily a correlation right now between Adam Whynua-Blake's stats and the Warriors winning footy games. There's no correlation between Sean Johnson's kicking meters, because he does all the kicking, and winning games. So that's where you've got to embrace the holistic picture about stats. Because the Warriors won that game against Panthers, and Whynua-Blake only played 49 minutes, and he only had 62 run meters. Whereas you go the loss to the Dragons, Whynua-Blake had 255 run meters. So there isn't always a direct relationship between the stats you put up and what you do to help your team win. And right now, the Warriors just need players who want to win. And I started thinking that specifically about Whynua-Blake. Because he seems like a prime candidate to put up the massive stats, but not necessarily doing all the stuff to help your team win. And I think there's a few other Warriors who are similar. Like kind of empty stats. Whereas the wins over the Panthers and the Dolphins, I don't care about Moala Graham-Telfer's stats. He made the plays. Yeah, Tomato Martin's try assists, they're stats, but he makes the plays. He just gets the plays done. And I think there might be some empty statistical intrigue with what the Warriors are up to right now. Holy cow, we've gone deep. This might be a bumper dumper podcast.
Yeah, well, I think it's spot on. I think there's, in fact, that even got me thinking there, like, what situations can I look at where, like, because the football stats are pretty tenuous in general. Like, you can say so-and-so scored this many goals, but also, like, they're a striker. They're supposed to score the goals. How many goals are their team scoring or whatever? But I might be able to, I don't know, Phoenix are off season. They would have been the best candidate. But it would have been interesting to look at, like, who scores the goals when they win? Is there someone who scores a lot in important situations versus someone who scores a lot in, like, congratulations, you scored the one in a 3-1 loss kind of thing? Or, you know, what does Alex Rufer's passing success rate look like when they win versus when they lose or draw or whatever? I wonder if there's, like, that just got me thinking on a spiral there about how I could apply that idea, because I think that's quite an interesting idea, is like specific performances and victories are so clearly worth more than performances and losses. It seems like a simple idea, but you tend to, you know, it's not often split into those ideas. And I wonder if there are players who do yet. The Warriors seem like there's probably a few where you could make a case for players who have put up good numbers and losing performances and been ineffectual or absent entirely and winning performances. And then players who put up average numbers and winning performances and don't get a go in the losing performances, where, like, maybe a dude who's just doing his job as part of a winning team is still better than someone who's going above and beyond, but the team loses every week. Like, you gotta not put the horse before the cart there, and remember that you're trying to win games of whatever sport you happen to be playing, in this case, rugby league.
We need to touch on a few more topics before we finish our podcast. And what I reckon we'll do is we'll touch on a bit of White Ferns, touch on a bit of NBL, then you can have your full footballing container. because I reckon a lot of the football stuff kind of weaves together, so it's hard to segment it and just let you go hard on the football because you've graced me with a bit of space to express my opinion on Razor and the Warriors and various matters like that. We have a Cricket World Cup happening still, and I just want to highlight a few funky bits and pieces. Can you guess Corey Anderson's T20 World Cup strike rate?
He had an innings the other day where he got like 10 or 15 or something, I think I saw. So I'm guessing it's not in the 160s territory. I'm guessing it might be in the do I go over or under 100? Which way? Let's be non-generous with this because I'm a bit of Blackcaps fan. I'm going to say 95.
You're moving in the right direction. 91.66.
Oh,
So
it wasn't harsh enough.
Corey Anderson, T20 slugger extraordinaire. Got a strike rate of 91, sorry, 91. So shout out to him. Also shout out to the Dutch Kiwis. We've got Max O'Dowd, Logan van Beek, and the one and only Tim Pringle. Max O'Dowd was the only Dutch cricketer to hit a 50, strike rate of 101.2. Logan van Beek didn't do much with the bat, but he was pretty good with the ball. 7 wickets, average of 18, RPO of 8.2. He was the leading wicket taker for the Netherlands. And of course, Tim Pringle, his 5 wickets at an average of 20, RPO of 7.7 makes him the best New Zealand spinner at the T20 World Cup. Big respect to the Netherlands for developing young Tim Pringle there, giving a bit of a T20 experience. That sounds mean, but it's a mutually beneficial situation because, of course, the Dutch, they got O'Dowd, they got Van Beek. Van Beek doesn't seem like he's going to play for New Zealand in the coming years, but Tim Pringle's already played a bunch of T20 World Cup games. And he's a hardy Kiwi, so watch out for Tim Pringle in the T20 New Zealand spin mixer, because he was kind of one of the best spinners in the Super Smash off the top of my head last summer, which will be interesting this summer. We do have the White Ferns starting their tour of England, first ODI, Thursday morning. They had a warm-up game, and I think we've got 3 batters scored over 35 runs. Can you guess who they were?
Amelia Kerr, Susie Bates, Sophie Devine.
That's correct.
That was easy.
Two bowlers took 3 wickets. Can you guess who they were?
Ooh. Amelia Kerr, Sophie Devine.
This was a bit of a doocer. It was Amelia Kerr and Molly Penfold. Molly Penfold took 3 for 5 RPO. Lauren Down is only in the ODI squad, I believe. And she is apparently so good at cricket that she's just straight back into this White Ferns squad after a maternity break. So I'm curious to see how Lauren Down performs in the ODI series. Because if she's got the straight back in treatment, one assumes that Lauren Down is going to score runs because she must be one of the best batters in New Zealand. So I expect Lauren Down to score some ODI runs in the series. And I'm also curious. Let's throw it out there. I'm fascinated by Izzy Gaze and Molly Penfold. Of course, White Ferns to win games is probably going to be Amelia Kerr, Sophia Devine, Susie Bates, those characters doing most of the mahi. But given recent events, Izzy Gaze, she's now the leading wicketkeeper. So this is her opportunity to enjoy a bit of faith, a bit of consistent selection, one would assume. And she also showed some promising signs with the bat at the end of last summer. So watch out for Izzy Gaze, maybe even some development. Maybe the ball stays in her gloves. We'll wait and see. Also Molly Penfold. because Rosemary Meir is out of this squad. She's out injured. I don't think Leah Tahuhu is in the ODI squad either. So suddenly Molly Penfold has a big opportunity to keep building on her career. She started well with 3 wickets in the warm-up game, and I am curious to see what she does. Considering they've only got Jess Kerr, Molly Penfold, Hannah Rowe, then Sophie Devine as an all-rounder. So I would expect a lot of game time for Molly Penfold and, of course, Izzy Gaze, assuming she is the leading wicketkeeper for the White Ferns. NBL basketball. Tall Blacks are away. You can summarize recent events in the New Zealand NBL. Maybe even talk about Tommy Vodanovich, but I'm curious. My question is, give us a Kiwi or two to watch out for now that the Tall Blacks are away and you're like, oh, this is a good opportunity for this player, these players to do something while the best players are out representing Aotearoa. And you also mentioned in the Monday newsletter that a couple players had departed for an Australian development tour as well. Mitch McCarron, Sam Folling, and Ben Henshaw. So there's a few players dipping out of the NBL. Just like the New Zealand cricket contracts, this presents opportunities for youngsters and emerging talent. Just like the Warriors losing with their best players, in theory there should be opportunities for the second tier players if Coach Andrew Webster actually drops players or there's injuries and suspensions. What are you intrigued about with the New Zealand NBL right now, given what is happening with players departing the competition?
Well, the funny thing about that is they had the Auckland Tuatara missing 3 of their starting 5 for Tall Blacks duty. Taranaki have also got a Tall Blacks player missing, plus 2 of those Australian dudes. The 2 teams that were missing 3 of their presumably best 5 players. I mean, for Taranaki, those are 2 of their imports, the 2 Australian guys. Both of those teams had wins this weekend, so apparently it didn't matter. Taranaki beat a good Franklin Bulls team as well, so that's they had Luther Muhammad scoring 32, playing every minute. Sam Timmins got 26, 11, 5 assists as well, which is massive from him, but only the second best Kiwi big man line of the weekend, because Callum McRae did even better for Southland. Let's see if I can find that. Against Tauranga, he had 21.16 rebounds and 6 assists. So Timmins scored a few more points. So maybe. However, McRae was in a winning effort. So to keep to the theme of the podcast, we'll give McRae the nudge on those ones. But Taranaki still beat Franklin by 4 points, and along with Elijah Mini import scoring 30 points. Also had Carlin Davison with another 20-pluser. He's with 7 assists too. And every one of their starting 5 got at least 12 points. So they're fine. They've been able to cover the gap. Those Australian players, I think, will be back. If not next week, then definitely the week after. They were only going for a 2-game sort of exhibition tour of Japan. The Tall Blacks will obviously be a little bit longer, so the Tuatara will be more affected by this. However, and their 102-70 demolishing win over the Otago Nuggets, Rob Lowe probably the best on the court with 18 points from 7 of 8 shooting, 9 rebounds, 7 assists. If he'd played the garbage time, if they hadn't been up by so much, he might have been a triple-double watch the way he was gone. But the standout performances were Charlie Dalton, 19 points from 7 of 11 shooting. Tukaha Cooper with 20 points. Braden Aiuli with 20 points. 20 points of 8 of 10. I think Aiuli is a pretty interesting player to watch because he came back a little bit mid-season, like a month or 2 into the season. He's been doing college stuff. So has Dalton, actually. I don't think he's finished the college stuff. I think he's going back, I think he's only done a couple years, but he's like 19 or 20, same age as Charlie Dalton, and those two between them combined for 39 points of 15 of 22 shooting. So outstandingly good stuff from a couple of young Kiwi prospects currently doing college basketball stuff. Like, that's the age range they're in, and stepping up when leading Tall Blacks options were unavailable for the team. So yeah, as far as dudes being able to, um, take their opportunities when they came along, contribute to winning basketball as young players, like there's no dramas there. The NBL had things covered nicely. Um, which what was the other thing we were talking about? Oh yeah, leading into Tommy Vodanovich, because Tom Vodanovich is a dude who impacts winning basketball. Because what has Tom Vodanovich done in the last 3 seasons? He's played in the NBL finals each time with a different team each time. He's the first guy in history to go to the finals 3 years in a row with 3 different teams, and he's won 2 of those finals. The only one he lost was when he played for the Breakers. So unfortunate. And then even then they were 1 game away from winning the championship. It's not like they got smoked out there. That was the second best team by a few inches in that season. So Tom Vodanovich, fresh from where are we there? Sydney Kings, won the championship with them, made the finals with the Breakers, won a championship with Tasmania Jack Jumpers. That was as a sort of mid-season recruitment. The smallest role he had of the 3, but still he turned up on a winning team and didn't stop them from winning, that's for sure. And now he's going to the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, so maybe he'll make it 4 in a row. Maybe make it four seasons in the finals, 4 different teams. Might as well just win a championship while he's there if that's the case. But Tom Vodanovich definitely, and when he comes back from trying to get the Tall Blacks to the Olympics, he'll be trying to win an NBL championship with the Auckland Tuatara as well, where he's shooting the lights out from range. He's just one of the best 3-point shooters. When you take into account accuracy and also volume of shots per game, he is one of the best 3-point shooters in the league this season. He's been fantastic and definitely fits into this thing we've been talking about players who, he doesn't have to be the star player on any team he plays in. He's not going to be the star player in any team he plays in. Even in the NZNBL, he's second or third or fourth option in that Tuatara team that also has Rob Lowe and Corey Webster, for example. And that's fine because he just wins games of basketball. He does what's required to win. He's a rough player who will throw himself around on the floor if he needs to. He'll hustle and grab rebounds. He'll defend as well as he can, and he'll shoot very well. He's the kind of guy I'm guessing other players don't really like to come up against because you're going to leave the court with a few bruises. He's a guy who impacts winning, and that has been dutifully highlighted with what has been reported. I don't think it's been officially announced yet, but I'm sure that won't be far away. Having scooped up another NBL contract in Australia with another Australian NBL team.
The All Whites are rolling through the Oceania Football Confederation Nations Cup, and they have a semi-final on Thursday, midday New Zealand time, against Tahiti. I assume they've won every game so far. They recently defeated Vanuatu. Most recently, they defeated Vanuatu 4-0. I don't think we need to get into the nitty-gritty of each game, considering the All Whites should be winning these games, to be honest. And they'll play this game against Tahiti, which will be very interesting. But for our podcast discussion, I want to know who's winning in the All White squad. Which players are making the most of this opportunity? I mean, it's not quite as dramatic as the other topics we've discussed today, but this is a second-tier All Whites crew. A lot of the big Donnies are not playing. So which of the second-tier / younger, because I think this is more of a younger, who's the Bunty Afoa in this All White squad?
Bunty Afoa, Alex Rufer, maybe?
Yeah, there you go. That's good. That's good. So
he's the only guy who's played every minute through the first 2 games.
Bang. Hey, Rufer. Leader. I imagine
only Bunty Afoa had that kind of work rate, or not work rate, workload, if he was given that kind of workload.
So who's really commanding your attention with their performances in this tournament?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of players in there who sort of just needed to get some goals, and it doesn't really matter who it's against. It's like score some international goals so that you're not in your own head next time you're playing. I think Max Mata had not scored an international goal in 7 or 8 caps leading up to this point. Got one nice and early against Vanuatu, so that was good. That was very helpful to see. Typical Max Mata goal too, just a sort of leaping, towering, but also comfortable header at the back post, just jumping up, nodding it down, back across goal, sweet as. His aerial presence, I think we're going to see a lot of that for Auckland FC because that is the strength of his game. His ability to get up and win headers and also his ability to play with his back to goal where, holding the ball up, laying it off. And we saw some of that nice stuff against Vanuatu. The game before they against Solomon Islands, Ben Waine got a couple goals. That's nice. Always good to see Ben Waine scoring goals. That performance was, I thought, kind of average, but that comes with, what do you call it, qualifiers, because the Solomon Islands had already played against Vanuatu. That was the second game that was our first game of the tournament. Definitely got the feeling Baisley was holding things back and telling them to be more conservative, managing the game in the second half in particular, knowing they had 4 games coming up in the space of 2 weeks, which I thought was maybe a little bit overly conservative, but also they used 6 debutants, like 2 of them from the start and 4 of them off the bench. 6 debutants in your team. Don't expect a full free flowing quality performance, especially on what the pitches weren't not amazing there. It was a lot of wobbles from square passes across the back. So all things considered, yeah, whatever, get through that one. That was a 3-0 win. They were much better, I thought, against Vanuatu. And I think, the other player as well, I should mention, who needed a goal, Costa Barbarousta's always got to pad that international stat. He's had a fantastic club season, get him right back into the mix for the All Whites at a time where they could have gone the other way. You might have otherwise seen the end of Costa Barbarousas in an All Whites jersey, but not the case. Resurgent season with the Phoenix, and he's back here and adding another goal because he's been one. He doesn't always play in a role where he's expected to score the goals. He often plays out wide, but you want to see dudes like that rewarded. And he had I think 4 goals and 55 caps or something leading into this tour. He's now got a 5th goal, so that's important. I'm sure he'll maybe pop up with another 1 or 2 before this tournament is over as well. But I thought the main difference between the first game and the second game was that they moved Elijah Just from right wing into the sort of central attacking midfield role. And instead of having Costa Barbarouses there playing as a bit more higher forward, bit more like a second striker rather than a number 10. But they moved him out to the right wing. And so with just in the middle, you had someone who links up a lot more rather than someone who's looking to run in behind. So he just drifted from side to side, combined with the fullbacks, combined with the wingers, and was outstanding in that game. He scored a goal and I think got 2 assists in a 4-0 win. He was the best player on the park by a large distance. So if you're looking for players who are taking their opportunity, he is one of the more he's a first choice. He's not necessarily a first 11 player, but he might be. He's on the fringes. He's definitely a first choice squad member though. And so you sort of expect guys like him, Cacache, probably Ben Waine is pushing towards this status as well. There's a couple of them in the squad. You kind of expect them to be the best players because they are the best players. And Elijah just played like that. He is maybe trying to get a transfer as well. He was definitely trying to get a transfer a couple months ago. Whether that's still on, we might find out. I'm sure the Nations Cup probably, if they didn't sort that out beforehand, either it's not going to happen or they're just going to sort it out afterwards. I don't think we'll see anything during his time in Vanuatu. But yeah, I thought he was absolutely fantastic in that second game. So he's been the best player in the tournament so far for the All Whites, and they will play Tahiti in the semi-finals. In the other semi-final, it'll be Vanuatu as hosts versus Fiji as maybe the best team so far. I mean, they had an easier group than we did, but also they had a 9-1 win against Samoa. I think they put 5 past Papua New Guinea. Only won 1-0 against Tahiti. So that's maybe, I don't know if that's an indication of what the All Whites are up against, but they've scored 15 goals in 3 games, Fiji have. And Roy Krishna, I think, only has 4 of them, and 3 of them were penalties. So he's playing, and he's playing very well for them. But they're definitely not a one-man team in the way that people might have thought just looking at the big-name professional in that squad.
What about old Tyler Binden?
Yeah, Tyler Bindon, Finn Sermon, they've been the starting CB combo in both games. They played 90 against Solomon Islands. They were given a rest for the last sort of 20 minutes or so of the second game. They've been sharp. You don't have to do a whole lot of defending when you're dominating possession and scoring a lot of goals, but they're also both Bindon. I'm sort of putting them together here. I know you only asked about Bindon, but it's hard not to look at them. They're the same age, and they're both probably going to be the centre back combinations at the Olympics, and also probably for the All Whites. Like I think we're going to see a lot of games with these two as the starting centre backs. Maybe not quite yet in the first choice team, but at some point in the near future, that's going to become a very, very, very regular occurrence. And they're both guys who can chip in with goals, I think. Definitely, I would like to see that become. If Sermon's still at the Phoenix next season, I want to see him score at least 3 goals. He sort of had one last year, but they turned it into an own goal. But he is such a presence in the air that I don't see why you don't just send him up. They do send him up for corners all the time. I don't see why he can't score a few goals every year doing that. And I think Bindon probably has similar potential as well. And Tommy Smith's not a bad guy to pick up some tips from, because writing about him as an Auckland FC signing, I was looking back through a lot of his career and reminding myself just how for a centre back, he's certainly a guy who popped up with a goal quite often for Ipswich Town. He did the same thing in the MLS. He hasn't really played consistently enough the last couple of years to keep that up, but he's definitely a centre back who knows where the goal is at both ends of the pitch. So he's not a bad one to pick up some tips from as far as those things go. Not a bad one to pick up some tips from in any aspect of central defending. But yeah, good solid stuff from Tyler Bindon and Finn Sermon, who I think are as much as anyone going to be able to use this tournament as a platform to take them into the Olympics in a few further weeks.
We've had that Marko Stamenic move to Nottingham Forest and Olympiacos confirmed. Something else that just popped up on the wire via Hamish, the bro Hamish, young heart. He shared something about Manchester United trying to sign Joshus Zirkzee. Why is that important to New Zealand football fans?
Well, it's not, unless you're a Bayern Munich or a Manchester. I don't. He's not at Bayern Munich anymore, is he? But he used to be at Bayern Munich. Was the point? This was a dude who was a teammate of Sarpreet Singh's a few years ago when they were both in the Bayern Munich reserve team. And I don't know if it's important to New Zealand football fans so much as it just being a little bit of a what if situation. Like, here's a guy who Sarpreet Singh scored more goals than in that season. Jamal Musiala was in that team as well as like a 16-year-old when they won the third division and weren't allowed to be promoted because they're a reserve team, and there has to be a division between your first team and reserve team in the German football. That was the rules. So they got back-to-back promotions, but the year they won the three Liga, I can't remember what 3 years in German, but the 1, 2, 3 is German, eh? So the season they won that and they looked stacked with prospects. I was just looking whimsically back through that squad last night, having a gaze at this after I saw that tweet, and thinking how Sarpreet Singh has had absolutely zero luck in Germany. Outside of that, he is currently a free agent, so he can do what he wants now as far as what his next move is. Hopefully there's something good, because when he found a decent fit, he got injured, and when he wasn't injured, he couldn't find a decent fit. It's frustrating. And then you see someone like Xerxes, who there was an age where they were like, they're similar ages. There was a time when they were in the same team and Singh was playing just as well as him, if not better, and this guy's gone on to do big, fantastic things. But then also, you can't always judge from youth teams. You don't always, youth team performance, it doesn't correlate necessarily to senior things, but it is a thought, because there's a dude from that team who now plays for Chris Richards, I think, American fullback, who plays for Crystal Palace. There's a guy who was playing in Italy as well, the French midfielder. There's a couple of them who've gone on to quite nice things. It's not very many, actually, who are playing regularly for Bayern Munich. It's kind of just Musiala, who was barely in that team. He played a few games off the bench as a 16-year-old. He was first breaking through. His real impressive stuff came a little bit after that. He's the best player from that team now, but that's just another example of how the youth team stuff doesn't necessarily correlate with what the players will become, but also where those pathways are. And for a team like Bayern Munich, their first team's so good, it's very hard to get in there as a youth player. So basically none of them, except for the one global superstar, have been able to actually stick around. So maybe that was perspective on Sarpreet Singh's time there as well. I don't know.
Is there any buzz around Sarpreet Singh as a free agent? And if there isn't, why isn't a move to Auckland FC being explored? Because I threw that question at you, hoping for a bit more enthusiasm about this a bit of train spotter stuff like this guy played with Sarpreet Singh, because we are the sons of Sarpi. So I was looking for a bit more enthusiasm, but once you start answering, I was like, yeah, this is more sad than anything. Like,
Yeah,
just,
well, it is.
it's just a
Unfortunately.
rotten. Germany just seems like a rotten place for Sarpreet Singh, and as the sons of Sarpi, that does make me sad. But if Sarpreet Singh's trying to rebuild his career and just play some footy and get himself back into the shop window for some bigger teams, some bigger clubs around the world, A, is there any transfer buzz about him or any free market buzz about him, free agency buzz about him? And B, what's wrong with Auckland FC or the Wellington Phoenix or the A-League, just as a stepping stone for him to play footy? Because the only thing that's missing with Sarpreet Singh's career right now is him playing footy.
Yeah, and every time he plays for the Always, he just looks outstanding. Like he looks better and more influential than guys like Callum McCoward and Elijah Just, who have played top division regularly in Denmark, for example. So, and like we know how good those guys are, and Sarpreet Singh is outperforming them for the national team, and then he goes back to his club thing and can't get a go for a team getting relegated from the second division of German football. Like it just doesn't make sense. It's just somehow he's got to find a club that fits him. It could be Auckland FC or Wellington Phoenix, but I kind of feel like he's done the A-League thing, and it's just going to be, unless he personal reasons really wants to just come back to New Zealand, and maybe he would after some pretty wilderness experience and kind of years in Germany. Like that could be an option, but footballing wise, he's got to be able to get something. He could now get the kind of move that a strong season in the A-League would promote him for. You know what I mean? Like the kind of moves that, I don't know, Ben Old is looking to make right now off the back of a great season for the Wellington Phoenix. Sarpreet Singh could do that now without going to the Phoenix or Auckland to build his reputation back up. So I don't think that's necessarily something to look for or expect. I don't think it's necessarily something that's on his radar. I'm more interested in whether he stays in Germany or not, because he's invested a lot into Germany. He speaks German now. He's probably got a level of comfort there that he wouldn't have somewhere else, but also just it hasn't worked for him there. So like, would he consider going to the Netherlands? Feels like a good fit, or Belgium, or France, or some of the I mean, yeah, Ben Old was being linked to a club in France. Any club that would take Ben Old should be trying to sign Sarpreet Singh because he's better in a similar position. Like, but I've heard no rumors yet or anything like that. I don't necessarily, especially with a free agent, it's not like you need to create. You don't need to use the media for your agent to create any kind of bidding war, because you can just do what you want. You sign wherever you want, and that can happen behind the scenes without it needing to be something that breaks into the transfer buzz. So I don't know that we'll hear anything about it till he signs somewhere. I'm also curious as to whether he's willing to play at the Olympics or not, because he's available, but also might have bigger priorities in terms of trying to find a club that might not be That might be more important to him. Well, it is more important to him in the meantime. Whether he can do both, I don't know. So that's another thing to keep an eye on, is whether he pops up for that. He was certainly never going to play Nations Cup, but he guaranteed, if he's looking for game time, he's guaranteed that at the Olympics. So we'll see. I guess we'll see.
And he would obviously be an over 23 player.
Yeah, I think he's 24 now, so he's not far over, but like Libby Kakache, he would be slightly above the cutoff to where he would need to be one of the three overage players, but it can be done. I mean, he's one of our three best overage players anyway. If he's available, he's there.
Yeah, and that, like, it's the same. Him playing the Olympics is the same concept in my mind as him playing in the A League. Like, he just needs to play some football. Like, just play some football.
Yeah, get a spotlight on him, get some minutes in the legs, score some goals, set up some goals. He could do that at either. You're right.
Last question on the footballing tip is about the Auckland FC signings, and there's the headline signings, and then there's probably a few deep cut signings that folks aren't really aware of who they are, where they come from. Which of those sneakier signings intrigues you right now?
Well, I thought that Lewis Toomey and Liam Gilligan were good enough just to get normal contracts, not scholarship contracts. So I'm a little bit surprised that they've been part of that group. They've signed 6 players already, and then 6 additional scholarship players were added last week. So let me see if I can work this out at the top of my head. Cam Howison and Jesse Randall and Francis de Vries and Michael Vowd were the first burst, and then they came back with Tommy Smith and Max Matza. Then they've signed 6 scholarship players, which are Lewis Toomey, Liam Gilligan, Adama Koulibaly, Finn McKechnie, two of the other ones, Jonty Bidwa, and there must have been Oliver Middleton as well. So I believe that's the lot. I thought Toomey and Gillian would just get normal contracts, so to have them as scholarship contracts is a little bit of a surprise, but also like good business because it keeps open spots in the first team to be able to sign other players, and these guys, just because they're on scholarship deals doesn't mean they're any less likely to play than anyone else. So again, like, this is Blackcaps contracty type stuff now. It just doesn't matter that Trent Bolt's on a short-term deal. He can still play some cricket if he's available. And if they want to pick him, there's same deal with these dudes. Like, I think of someone like Mania Elliott in the Women's Phoenix, started that season on a scholarship. She actually played enough as a scholarship player that her contract automatically got reverted into a first team contract. Like, it became a senior contract because she played too much as a scholarship player. So, that's not a hurdle, and that's just good signing and stacking out the team that way. So those guys are, I think, players who could contribute from day one, potentially. We'll see how that goes. But as far as the more deeper prospects, the guy I've seen the least of is the guy I'm most intrigued by, and that's Adama Koulibaly, because I scooped through a few of his highlights, because he plays for Western Springs and they haven't made the National League the last couple of years while it's been an available pathway for clubs. So I haven't been able to do the week in, week out thing with him. Only really seen him in highlight clips, but watching some of his highlight clips, I'm seeing a defensive midfielder who's very composed on the ball, knows how to like drop a shoulder and turn out of pressure, good passer, good athlete as well. And I haven't seen enough of him to make like grand judgments, but I am pretty intrigued by what I have seen. And I don't want to, you can't overreact to highlights because that's not the full package. But if you can do those things, there's a good chance you are a player who can tie it all together in the course of a full game.
That profile sounds like Marko Stamenic.
I haven't seen the raking like 50-meter crossfield switches from him, but like I say, I haven't seen enough of them to say that. But definitely, the other thing with Stamenic is he's very good on the dribble, but I think Koulibaly looks like he might be that as well, like someone who can carry the ball forward as well as passing the ball forward. I think that's not a bad, if he's looking for someone to emulate. That's not a bad example, particularly in the week where Marko Stamenic just signed with the Premier League club and got loaned out to the Europa Conference League reigning champions, who Olympiacos. Which on that note as well, because there was one other player I wanted to highlight because it ties in on winning stuff. Malia Steinmetz just completed a league and cup double. Marko Stamenic completed a league and cup double in Serbia. He also did one in Denmark last year. Malia Steinmetz has just done it in Denmark with FC Nordjylland. They beat Brøndby in the cup final, having also drawn with Brøndby the week before to ensure that they won the league title in Denmark. The awesome thing about this is, first of all, Malia Steinmetz plays for a very young team who are the best team in Denmark, one of the youngest teams in the division and the best team. They have an average age of like 22, and she at 25 is one of the oldest players in the squad. But she spent 3 years in the A-League prior to going over. Her first year in the A-League, and this is a good example of why players not impacting winning isn't always the player's fault. Sometimes they're just not on a very good team. First year in the A-League, she played for a Perth Glory team that drew one of their 12 games, lost 11. So she didn't win a game that season. They were wooden spooners. Second year in the A-League, she moved to Western Sydney, and then Perth actually got kind of good. And Western Sydney were terrible. And the only reason they didn't come last is because that was the first year of the Wellington Phoenix, who finished below them on goal difference. So it was that close. Malia Steinmetz, her team did win a game that year, but she was injured for the game that they won, or she was away with the football Ferns or something like that. I don't know, but she didn't play the one game they won. So she did not experience a victory. When I didn't talk about winning trophies here, she did not experience a single victory in a game that she played in her first 2 seasons in the A-League. She played 39 games and won 5 across 3 seasons. She got a few, Western Sydney were a lot better the third year, her second year at that club. There now and I suppose I also got to add the football Ferns weren't exactly an abundance of victories during that span as well, so she wasn't getting them at the international level. Her first year in Denmark, she's won a league and cup double, qualified for the Champions League. So she had to pay a few dues to get to where she is, but the wins have finally started to flow for someone who I would argue is now one of the first names on the team sheet for the football Ferns whenever they play as well. Particularly since I think that's not even an argument. Since Ria Percival retired, I think that's just a fact. Malia Steinmetz is probably the first midfielder on the list.
And she's a nice complementary piece when you consider the young football Ferns coming into that group with Millie Clegg and Macy Fraser. Like that's Millie Clegg's a striker though, but there's a spine right there for the future.
Absolutely. Striker, attacking midfielder, defensive midfielder, sweet as. Like that's you can build a team around that. They are building a team around that. It's just people don't necessarily seem to be noticing.
Sounds almost as enticing as my little trio of Blackcaps, Fennell, Rachin, Ravindra, and Glenn Phillips for the T20 team. I like it.
There you go. There you go.
Right, yeah, that is the niche cast. Hit us up if you got any thoughts or comments. And obviously, big up to all the members of the Patreon whānau, those with a paid Substack subscription. Shout out to everyone, just doing your best. Have a crack. Enjoy yourself. And we'll be back on Thursday with our subscriber podcast. Until then, check us out on all the platforms. Big up yourself, love yourself, kia kaha, stay beautiful, chur.